Welcome to the Elusive Truth with Rich and Larry. 2022 is turning out to be the Great Awakening. More and more people are finally hearing the truth and understanding it. Larry is so overwhelmed with all the information coming out that he has to take a break. He has to find his phone. Anyway, amazing stuff happening all over the country, all over the world. And we're going to start things off with some very interesting news. Here, check it out. So thank God that the Supreme Court finally struck down the Biden administration's mandate for the vax requirement. Unfortunately, there are still companies and entities that say, screw it, we're going to make you take the vaccination anyway. So here is Adam Calhoun on his take on what's going on. And like I said, at least people are starting to understand what is happening in the world, and we're going to do something about it. We're tired. We're done. Have a listen.
Carhartt, what are you doing? Do you see this hat? There's guys that like try to dirty their hat up and make it look like this. This is years. You guys know how important this hat is to me. This has been in so many of my videos, like music videos, on stage with me. I was going to give this hat away and for a good cause, raise money, something. Carhartt, what are you doing, Carhartt? This is trash. This is garbage. Done. Good thing I make my own hats. Carhartt, after the Supreme Court said, nah, we're not doing the mandate thing. Everyone's got it. After the Supreme Court shot that down, Carhartt says, no, our people are still going to get this. You know what I'm saying? The thing that I'm not allowed to say. All their employees have to get that to keep their job. Hey, Carhartt, what are you doing? Do you know who wears your clothes? Blue collar, middle class, people that are barely making it in life. Me, heartbroken, hardworking, proud Americans wear these clothes. They're rugged, they last, and you roll over for these slimy liberals. You're so full of bullshit. Starbucks overturned it. They're not making their employees do it. Starbucks, Becky, Starbucks. You're trash. I knew it. I knew when I saw some kid working in the mall at Zoomies or some Jamba Juice wearing a Carhartt hat. I said, all these kids are wearing these Carhartt hats, not doing any Carhartt
stuff.
Well, I guess I was wrong. They are doing Carhartt
stuff.
They're working at a coffee shop as a barista or Ooh, yeah, I'm mad. Yes, I'm mad. I'm mad because what is happening? Everything is backwards now in the world. Why? And you know what? Carhartt, they don't get it. I'm just a guy. And I'm going to burn all my Carhartts. And they're not going to care. And I'm not trying to be like, ooh, edgy. No. It doesn't mean nothing. It doesn't mean anything. It has no meaning. You're just the same as everyone else. You go woke and be dumb. So yeah, all right, let's go. I'm not doing this to be cool. I'm doing this because I cannot believe all the years of hard work put in, and you guys just roll over.
Great job, Adam, for explaining your issues with Carhartt. And for those who don't know who Adam Calhoun is, check out his newest collaboration with Mr. Tom McDonald. Awesome video. Came out Friday. New song. Here we go, 2022. So despite all the new awakenings going on and happening around the world, there are still places like New York City that statues are still #1 public enemy. Here is Gutfield from Fox News. This was pretty funny.
So finally, justice has arrived after all the rampant crime, the smash and grabs, the subway shovers, the brutal random murders of young women. Our leaders are finally doing something about it. Late Wednesday night, a statue of Theodore Roosevelt was removed after standing in front of the American Museum of Natural History for more than 80 years. Yeah, instead of removing the vagrants who've been defecating, doing drugs, and assaulting people, go after the inanimate stiff. That'll make life better. But hey, Teddy was evil. Those glasses, that mustache, he probably wore those as a disguise while he was beating up people of color. So get lost, you jerk, and take your racist horse with you. And what a heroic feat to rid us of Teddy, or at least his statue. So typical of libs to pick on something that can't hit back. By the way, the removal cost the city $2 million. So where are they sending Teddy to? Private school? Antifa could have done it for free with ropes, with CNN looking the other way. But where else would you like that money to go? For more policing in the subways or the streets where crime is rampant? Shut up, you bigot. Did you know the statue was deemed so offensive they covered it with a massive orange tarp? The monument's now in a library in North Dakota. So like all residents fleeing New York to Florida, it's probably safer. In the New York Post, they quote one of Teddy's descendants, Theodore Roosevelt V, who cheered the removal, saying the statue is being relocated to a place where its composition can be recontextualized to facilitate difficult, complex, and inclusive discussions. If Teddy were alive, he'd dress you up like a white rhino and chase you through Central Park with a 12 gauge. Now, if you think I care about these statues, I don't. I'm not into statues, except for the nudes. And even then, the security at the museum keeps a pretty good eye on me. But this is part of a larger problem. Americans care about crime. They don't care about statues any more than they care about trans bathrooms or pronouns. But someone does. It's our craven leaders who are under the thumb of a tiny woke mob. This as crime explodes in every city run by libs. We hear the tragedies every day, but they don't get the outrage you saw over statues in those heady days of the George Floyd riots. Never gets old. Now, many were of Confederate soldiers toppled by protesters, but it didn't stop there, and even the city leaders joined in, just as one guy predicted.
In the proud tradition of America's great leaders, from George Washington, please don't take his statue down, please. Please. To Lincoln, to Teddy Roosevelt, I see they want to take Teddy Roosevelt's down too. They're trying to figure out why, they don't know. They're trying to take away our culture. They're trying to take away our history. And our weak leaders, they do it overnight. These things have been there for 150 years, for 100 years. Weak people.
We didn't deserve him. Protesters tore down statues of anti-slavery heroes, as well as statues of governors. They removed monuments honoring citizens who fought in the Union Army. They trashed statues of the missionary Junipero Serra. That's my high school. That high school is named after him. Of course, Columbus was removed in Chicago by Lori Lightweight. Black kids are getting shot by other black kids, and she's like, let's get that dead Italian out of here. If only we had a visual aid to shed some light on these misplaced priorities. So as crime spun out of control, our media saw progress in this pointless purge. Abe Lincoln's statue was toppled in Portland. I guess they're siding with John Wilkes Booth. Both Thomas Jefferson and George Washington were also knocked down in that town. Then they destroyed the city. Of course, there's no correlation there. Andrew Jackson in Mississippi, Francis Scott Key in San Francisco, Ulysses S. Grant also toppled in SF, probably to be replaced by a giant bronze pile of human feces. Even Frederick Douglass wasn't safe. He was torn down in Rochester, New York. The Virgin Mary decapitated in Tennessee. Jesus Christ decapitated in Miami, probably because it needed a nose job. Even Gandhi was vandalized in Davis, California, and we all remember what a jerk he was. And yet the media and our politicians thought it was progress, that this would help cities and help people. But like what Disney did to Star Wars, they destroyed something and replaced it with something worse. The rest of us, though, we knew this was an excuse for mayhem, a gateway for more than just destroying statues. And what came next? Businesses and police precincts destroyed. Nothing was sacred. And when looting is defended as a good thing, society is as backwards as crisscrosses pants. There's a reference.
Wow.
It's the broken window theory on meth. You let society go to hell, and it quite literally goes to hell. We have criminals released from prison to commit more crime on New York subways, LA bus stations, high-end furniture stores. They'll stab you because they're as soulless and cold as the statues being torn down. And yet even now, the statues are still a priority because fake virtue signaling is easier than dealing with real suffering. And politicians were just more terrified of the mob than they were of you. Bill de Blasio, Ted Wheeler, Jacob Fry. If they were any more yellow, they'd be on The Simpsons. And now people are dying in part because leaders felt a piece of stone was more harmful than a dude with a knife. When the truth is, sometimes a statue is the only thing between you and the dude with a knife. So now the only safe statue is the one in the White House, until they make a real one of them. Then they'll tear it down in a heartbeat.
Can you believe it? Craziness still exists in this world. We have a long ways to go. But at least media, Fox, is talking about it. And it was kind of comical in a way. I had to redact a couple of things, but anyway, it was good to hear. So, moving on. So now on to Biden. Last week, he did a historic press conference. Well, you can imagine there's so much to talk about. Listen, this is how he answers a question to one of the reporters. Pretty wild stuff.
One more, sir. You campaigned and you ran on a return to civility. And I know that you dispute the characterization that you called folks who would oppose those voting bills as being Bull Connor or George Wallace. But you said that they would be sort of in the same camp.
No, I didn't say that. Look what I said. Go back and read what I said and tell me if you think I called anyone who voted on the side of the position taken by Bull Connor that they were Bull Connor. And that is an interesting reading of English. I assume you got into journalism because you like to write.
So did you expect that would work with Senators Manchin or Sinema?
No, here's the thing. There's certain things that are so consequential. You have to speak from your heart as well as your head. I was speaking out forcefully on what I think to be at stake. That's what it is. And by the way, no one forgets who was on the side of King or Bull Connor. No one does not. The history books will note it. And when I was making the case, don't think this is a freebie. You don't get to vote this way and then somehow it goes away. This will stick with you the rest of your career and long after you're gone.
So that's Joe Biden in 2022. Now, the nice thing that's happening is that Fox News is on board with other media outlets, and they're now finally reporting some truth. In this clip, Tom Cotton, Republican from Arkansas, is on Fox News, and they are going over this press fiasco. Have a listen, because we got Jen, Joe, and Kamala all waiting to say something. We start off with Jen Psaki clarifying what Joe Biden said to one of his questions.
He absolutely is not predicting that the 2022 elections would be illegitimate. The point he was raising was both that in 2020, even amongst challenging circumstances, efforts to suppress the vote, and the midst of a pandemic, there was record turnout. Democrats and Republicans, record turnout to go to the polls. He was not making a prediction. He has confidence in the American people, and we're going to do everything we can to protect people's rights.
She didn't touch that race part. In focus now, Republican Senator Tom Cotton of Arkansas, a member of the Senate Judiciary and Armed Services Committees. Good to have you in focus today. First of all, what's your reaction, or what was your reaction initially hearing the president say, oh, no, I didn't say that?
Well, Harris, he can get angry and shout and shake his fist at the clouds like Grandpa Simpson as much as he wants. But he said what he said in Atlanta a couple of weeks ago, and it's now widely recognized even by Democrats that it was beyond the pale and that it alienated the senators whose votes he needed, to include Democratic senators who he compared to those segregationists and secessionists, who I would point out are all Democrats, by the way. So no amount of spin is going to change what he said, just like no amount of spin from his underlings today will change the fact that he, in effect, gave Vladimir Putin a green light to invade Ukraine. We saw yesterday why the president's staff generally doesn't let him go out and meet the press.
Well, look, I mean, he looked up there at his watch and he kind of looked back. He made the decision to stay there, and then he threw his press people under the bus and said, oh, thanks a lot for helping me out up here. Wow, those are some really interesting moments behind, when they were trying to clean up on aisle 7 about what you're talking about. Let's get into it. Critics have torn into the president's comments, and they were rather bizarre on Russia as he went on and on and on about an imminent invasion by the Russians into Ukraine. Let's watch a bit.
I think what you're going to see is that Russia will be held accountable if it invades, and it depends on what it does. It's one thing if it's a minor incursion and then we end up having a fight about what to do and not do, et cetera. My guess is he will move in. He has to do something.
Well, like I said, I mean, it was hard during the press conference to even hear the rest of what he had to say because you're just kind of unpacking that. His critics were quick. They were pouncing on the shift, arguing the president just gave Russia a green light to invade and that no incursion is permissible. or impermissible, I should say, forgive me. Even Ukraine President Zelensky weighed in, tweeting earlier today, there are no minor incursions in small nations, just as there are no minor casualties and little grief from the loss of loved ones. Eventually, White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki clarified the president's comments last hour on America's Newsroom.
The president has conveyed directly to President Putin, if there is the movement of any military troops across the border, that is an invasion. If they go in, that is an invasion, and there will be severe economic consequences.
Look, Senator, she said it. The president didn't say that, though, and it wasn't like he misspoke. He really dissected exactly what he was anticipating and what we should brace for. What do you say about that?
Well, he did, and he spoke at greater length about Ukraine as well. What really matters is not what his underlings claim he said or what his cheerleaders in the Democratic media heard. What matters is what the Ukrainian president heard, and we just heard from him, and most importantly, what Vladimir Putin heard. And what Vladimir Putin heard is that he has a green light to invade Ukraine. And remember, these troops, more than 100,000 Russian troops and sailors, didn't just show up on Ukraine's border in a vacuum. This is happening in the aftermath of the catastrophic weakness and haplessness that President Biden displayed last August, getting our own people out of Afghanistan. Vladimir Putin saw that, and he saw how President Biden has appeased him for the last year, and he's concluded that now is the time to go for the jugular in Ukraine, because Joe Biden cannot lead a unified and strong response from the United States and our European allies.
He couldn't even make it clear what a red line is. Like, we're always looking for that. Well, what's the tipping point of getting us, to lean in with those epic-sized sanctions that he's talking about? And what exactly is a minor incursion? I mean, now we're left to watch the people who would be invaded to tell us on Twitter how they feel as targets right now. I mean, it's heartbreaking. And I would say, based on what you just said, really, really bad policy going forward. I want to get to this. Vice President Kamala Harris this morning snapped back when asked to clarify Biden's remarks on Russia and Ukraine.
I will tell you that the president has been very clear, and we as the United States are very clear. If Putin takes aggressive action, we are prepared to levy serious and severe costs.
It is less than clear because 30 minutes after the news conference, the White House press secretary had to actually clarify the president's remarks.
Savannah, I'm being clear with you right now.
Yes, okay.
And so if you're interested, I'll continue to be clear.
So they're angry and they're combative, and I don't know if that's as effective as original messaging.
No, well, again, the vice president and the press secretary and all the other White House underlings can go on every TV show they want today. That doesn't change the fact that Joe Biden yesterday got in some kind of academic philosophical debate about what level of invasion into Ukraine might cause a Western response, into some kind of academic debate about why Vladimir Putin is doing what he's doing. He's doing it because Joe Biden is weak and impotent, and he thinks he can take advantage of him. The last time we had a Democratic president, Vladimir Putin invaded Ukraine as well. But, for 4 years of Republican president and former President Trump, Vladimir Putin didn't invade Ukraine. Why do we think that is, despite the Democrats yelling Russia, Russia, Russia for 4 years? It's because Putin understood that Donald Trump, like Republicans, are strong, and we stand by our allies and partners around the world.
It's interesting. I don't think we've talked this much about Russia since that time, right? And it was all over the place as they went after Trump and so on and so forth. But now all eyes are on this president. And what is at the center of it today? Russia. What does Russia think? Real quickly, give me 10 seconds.
Russia thinks that Joe Biden is willing to stand idly by and slap the mildest of sanctions on them if they invade and occupy and annex Ukraine.
As you heard, the media now is coming out and reporting what the president is actually doing and not giving you some narrative of how great he is and he's the most popular president of all time and the most votes, etc., etc. Joe Biden's future is crumbling all around him. The media is now like sharks with blood in the water. It's a frenzy, folks. And 2022 has just begun. And now to the House floor with Chip Roy, Republican from Texas, whose speech on the House floor was practically empty. So I'm going to play it so everybody can hear, because you want the truth? He has the truth, and this is good stuff. Thank God we have people like this still in our government. So sit back and listen to this one, folks.
We don't want to have a debate on the floor of the House on anything, by the way, much less the reality of what has been happening with respect to this virus and our response to it. And what Anthony Fauci engaged in with respect to the reality of the truth of funding gain-of-function research, knowing full well the dangers, working to cover that up, hide from the American people how this virus came about, not wanting to pursue the truth on that, not wanting to pursue the truth or conduct studies on natural immunity. We have study after study after study coming out right now. I can pull up my phone and pull up study after study now, finally, demonstrating and showing how natural immunity is more powerful than vaccinations, and people don't want to be able to have that honest conversation. An adult leadership would have done like the nation of Japan. We believe that vaccines are effective for a large group of people. We believe that there are some risks. You're adults. We won't mandate. You decide. We can't do that in the supposed land of the free. We sit up here and we stare at that American flag and we talk about the Senate being the greatest deliberative body. They don't really debate. This being the people's house, the people's chamber. When was the last time the speaker heard a robust debate on the floor of the House with multiple members? When was the last time we offered an amendment on the floor of the House in open debate that wasn't predetermined by all of the rules overlords who govern our lives? Democrat and Republican, I do want to say. 6 years since we've had an amendment offered on the floor of the House, offered in open debate. You want to know why we can't do anything in this chamber? Because we don't ever debate. We don't ever actually have a discussion and throw things out there and then vote. Maybe, just maybe, we come to some bipartisan agreement. I'm happy to work with colleagues on my other side of the aisle. Dean Phillips and I worked on the PPP Flexibility Act. Abigail Spanberger and I have introduced legislation called the Trust Act to deal with stock trading, believing that might help improve people's faith and confidence in this body. I've introduced numerous bills and passed numerous bills with my colleagues on the other side of the aisle. That's not what this is about. It's about a broken body, refusing to actually debate, refusing to actually engage, refusing to offer amendments. Both sides do it. That needs to end. And the last point that I'll make on that point, if you want this body to function again, you have to stop spending money we don't have. If you keep writing blank checks, how on earth is there a check against the wisdom of the policy? You just keep writing a check to keep doing the same thing or to do something different. You can't run a business that way. You can't run a home that way. You can't run a church that way. You can't run a legitimate school that way. But no, we just keep writing checks to fund the expansion of government, to fund the creation of programs, no matter who's in power. Over the last year, we've seen what that causes when it's then left in the hands of an administration that literally does not care about the rule of law. To be very clear, this administration is ignoring the rule of law, ignoring their oath, ignoring their duty to enforce the laws of the United States, ignoring their duty to secure the border, ignoring their duty to stand up in defense of the men and women in blue, to follow the laws around the United States, ignoring their oath to stand up and defend the United States against our foreign enemies, hold the line against Russia, push back on Russia, sanction them, hold the line on Nord Stream 2, stand alongside Ukraine, push back on China, stop appeasing them. Don't leave $85 billion sitting there in the hands of terrorists when we walk away and abandon our duty and leave those men and women on the field and then have 13 dead Marines to show for it. That's the legacy of the first year of this administration. But will President Biden, when he strolls to that podium on March 1st for a so-called State of the Union, and we're all spread out and all wearing masks and doing whatever the heck we're going to do, not actually doing the people's business, will he address any of those issues? Will he talk about border security? Will he talk about how we're weaker around the world? Will he talk about the crime on the streets of Los Angeles, New York, Austin, San Antonio, Chicago? Will he talk about the businesses getting crippled by mask mandates and health mandates? Will he talk about the children who are now having mental health issues, the people who are sick, the diseases that weren't dealt with, all to push a vaccine mandate that goes contrary to the pursuit of happiness and our right as Americans to live free? Will he talk about any of those things? Will he talk about the fact that the United States of America is sitting on one of the world's largest reservoirs of energy. And yet we're wondering, even in Texas, whether you can have the lights on, because we've built no nuclear power plants. We've slowed down our production of clean burning natural gas, all chasing unicorn energy policies of wind and solar as if they can possibly power the world at the level that is needed for the proper amount of human flourishing, while 3 billion people around this planet do not have access to abundant energy and power. Will the President of the United States come down here and talk about that? Or will he get up there and just talk about, well, we're going to be net zero in our carbon production by 2035 or 2050? He'll make up some totally arbitrary number without regard at all to what that does to the price of energy and the availability and abundance of energy. All of this has real life consequences for Americans. People die. Houses get cold. People can't get access to energy. They can't afford energy. They lose jobs. You have stagnation. And then you have the brilliance of this administration and the brilliance of those in the media starting to talk about energy and food price control. Because of course that's what my colleagues on the other side of the aisle will resort to. They'll sit there and bemoan markets when they don't let the markets work. Healthcare markets never work. Well, we haven't had a healthcare market in decades. It's an absolute lie. And I'm looking at you, big healthcare. I'm looking at you, pharma. I'm looking at you, hospitals. I'm looking at you, big insurance. You made out like bandits after Obamacare. You minted money. Probably 3/4 of the people in this chamber fattened their wallets and their portfolios riding the back of all of that big healthcare enrichment, all at the expense of poor Americans around this country trying to get access to a doctor without having to call some bureaucrat in the government, the VA, their insurance company, or whoever it may be, but it sure as heck isn't their doctor. We don't have health freedom in this country. We have mandated big healthcare, big government, big insurance, bureaucracy. And everybody knows it. Everybody knows it because you all had to deal with it. You've had to call somebody. You had to call some kid sitting in Omaha in some phone bank telling you which doctor you can go to 2,000 miles away. That's the truth, and we all know it. And we sit in here, we roll in here, and we say, let's spend more money and create another government program. Let's spend more money we don't have. Not one person in this body will come down here and truly debate any of these truths. When you're $30 trillion in debt, when you're funding the very FBI going after parents for daring to stand up and defending their children in a school board meeting, when you're funding Department of Homeland Security that is literally lying to the American people saying our border is secure while hundreds of thousands of people come across. You want to know what happened in that synagogue? Because we don't have a dang clue who's coming to the United States, and this administration doesn't care. They don't care. They don't care what list they're on. They don't care whether they pose a danger to the United States of America. They don't care at all who's coming into this country. And they sure as heck don't care what's happening to the people of Texas, Arizona, or frankly, everybody around this country who are having to bear the costs, or having to bear the burden of what wide open borders means to the United States of America. Complain about Mayorkas? We should impeach him for failing to faithfully execute the laws of the United States of America, endangering Americans in the process, ignoring the laws of the United States. And that's what is happening. That's what is happening. America is poorer, sicker, and less safe a year into the Biden administration, and that is the truth. Our enemies know it. That's why Russia's going after Ukraine. That's why China is rattling on a daily basis. That's why Russia, China, and Iran are talking about joint exercises. That's why the cartels are emboldened. That's why there are people marching through Mexico from all over the world coming to our southern border. That's why there are people on the streets breaking into businesses, assaulting people on the streets and killing them, raping them, happening every single day in the United States of America with reckless abandon, while Democrats in district attorney's office, Democrats in the House of Representatives, Democrats in this administration do nothing about it and do not care that the American people are left holding the bag. And then they want to talk about taking away our Second Amendment rights and our ability to defend ourselves. Well, that crap ain't going to happen, because we're going to defend ourselves in the land of the free. We're going to stand up and defend our communities and defend our families. We're going to stand up in defense of the Constitution and limited government and freedom and be able to protect our families and protect our states when this administration is letting this country burn and then dares to do an hour-long press conference lecturing the people for wanting to make sure their elections are secure. for daring to say that we should have voter identification when that same administration is mandating vaccine mandates that is causing healthcare workers to lose their job. Healthcare workers in long-term health facilities to be unable to carry out their job. And then talk about, the burden on hospitals. Well, you just caused 20% of nurses to have to leave because you were mandating they take a jab for something that's a year old that Pfizer is making billions of dollars on. And then we won't even have a hearing about why on earth we're having this virus in the first place because of what Anthony Fauci knew and what NIH was up to and what China was up to. And we won't have a hearing about natural immunity. We won't have a hearing about the dangers and levels of dangers of the vaccines, what they may be. And again, my polio-stricken father, who's 79, has been vaccinated. I refuse to say whether I've been vaccinated because I think it's a principle for Americans that they shouldn't have to say. My point is, there are people for whom the vaccine makes sense. There are people for whom the vaccine does not make sense. Mandating a jab in a 5-year-old is irresponsible, and it's dangerous. And we should have that conversation instead of blindly walking around preaching what other people should stick in their dang arm. But that's what we do in the people's house. I'm sitting here in an empty chamber with the speaker, respectfully, and that's it. They're all jet fumed out, leaving town. We shut down early. Let's get out of here. Or they're out at some, fundraiser or something. Let's have a debate on these issues. Let's seek the truth. I don't know all the truth on all of those issues. I don't know the specific risks. I've read a lot about what's going on with vaccines, positive and negative. But it's becoming very, very clear that it doesn't do squat to stop the spread. So you're left basically saying, well, it's better for you so that you don't die in the hospital. Well, let's look at the data on that. But why don't we just present the information and let the American people decide? Japan's rate is a lot higher than ours, and ours has mandates. All they did was say, we think it's good. There are some risks. You decide. We can't do that in America. We can't just go down to the border and say, you know what? It's better for migrants, better for Texans and all Americans, bad for cartels, bad for China if we secure our border. That's the truth. Talk to the migrants getting abused. Talk to the people in South Texas. Go to Laredo and Webb County. Sit down with the brown people in Laredo who will say, we're pretty ticked off at this administration about how they're handling the border. My colleagues on the other side of the aisle might be up for a rude awakening pretty soon about their expectations of what voters are voting for them and what voters are not. Because there's a lot of people in this country that are sick and tired of an elite in this town immersed in the swamp, promoting big healthcare, promoting big tech, promoting big government, minimizing the rights and the abilities of Americans to live their lives the way they see fit. That is our calling as we head to 2026, our 250th birthday of the United States of America, which comes up in 4.5 years. Will we be able to say that we live in the land of the free? Will we be able to say that we are pursuing happiness? That we are the country of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness? And we will only be able to do that if we stand up and secure our nation's sovereignty, defend our streets, protect our families, stand up to enemies around the world, and limit this body to the job that it was given in the Constitution, limit our spending to the dollars that we have, and responsibly lead this country and represent the people so that this country can, in fact, be great in our agreements and our disagreements in a federalist republic where we're able to live free. And with that, I yield back.
A breath of fresh air. Unbelievable, but there you have it, folks. Somebody good. Somebody that's sticking up for America. A good speech. A good speech about the truth. All right, moving along. Next, we have Dr. Fauci. We all want to know when this pandemic will be over, so he was asked that very question, and believe it or not, he had a response.
Is 2022 actually the year that we go from pandemic to endemic? And does Omicron speed up the process, given its ability to spread and offer immunity through infection?
Well, the answer is we do not know that. And I think we have to be openly honest about that. And when the word endemic is used in different contexts, when I talk about the pandemic, I put it into 5 phases. The truly pandemic phase, where the whole world is really very negatively impacted, as we are right now. Then there's the deceleration of the pandemic. Then there's control then there's elimination and eradication. I think if you look at the history of infectious diseases, we've only eradicated one infectious disease in man, and that's smallpox. That's not going to happen with this virus. Then there's elimination. Elimination means when you get rid of it in your own country, but it's somewhere not in your country, but it's there. For example, polio has been eliminated in the United States and many developing nations. So what's the next one up the ladder is control. Control means you have it present, but it is present at a level that does not disrupt society. And I think that's what most people feel when they talk about endemicity, where it is integrated into the broad range of infectious diseases that we experience. For example, the cold weather upper respiratory infections, the parainfluenzas, the respiratory syncytial viruses, the rhinovirus, the adenoviruses. You want to get it at a level that doesn't disrupt society. That's the answer to your first question. That's my definition of what endemicity would mean, a non-disruptive presence without elimination. When you talk about whether or not Omicron, because it's a highly transmissible, but apparently not as pathogenic, for example, as Delta, I would hope that that's the case. But that would only be the case if we don't get another variant that eludes the immune response to the prior variant. For example, we were fortunate that Omicron, although it is highly transmissible, nonetheless is not as pathogenic. But the sheer volume of people who are getting infected overrides that rather less level of pathogenicity. So I really do think, Francine, that it is an open question as to whether or not Omicron is going to be the live virus vaccination that everyone is hoping for, because you have such a great deal of variability with new variants emerging.
That almost took 2 minutes to answer the question, and his answer was no. But my answer is yes, the pandemic is over. People are waking up, and it's glorious. People are really seeing what this thing is all about. And for my last clip, I have something from the House floor. Representative Buddy Carter is giving a review of the Biden fiasco of last year. A lot of truth will come out from this. I hope he can handle it.
Speaker, I'm delighted to yield 2 minutes next to the gentleman from the great state of Georgia, home of the new national championship football team. At least he didn't wear a red jacket. 2 minutes to Mr. Carter.
I thank the gentleman for yielding and for hosting this. Madam Speaker, Joe Biden's first year in office has exceeded all expectations. In 365 short days, Joe Biden has managed to inflict an entire term of pain and hardship on the American people. Grocery store shelves are empty. Prices are up 7% nationwide. Gas costs $1 more per gallon today than it did when Biden took office. Americans lost the equivalent of 2 paychecks last year, and Biden has failed to add one single job from our 2019 high. In fact, Madam Speaker, only one thing has gone down in price during this administration, and that's the price of fentanyl. That's the price of fentanyl. Because of the fentanyl that's coming across the southern border. Washington Democrats were counting on Joe Biden to socialize our economy, and boy, did he deliver. His administration caved to teachers' unions, putting the wants of liberal elites ahead of the needs of our children who are desperate for high-quality in-person learning. Domestic terrorist, that is how his administration labeled parents who want better for their children than virtual learning. It's despicable. He caved to Russia, gutting the Keystone XL pipeline on his first day in office, but allowing the Nord Stream 2 pipeline to push ahead virtually unchecked. He caved to Fauci, who kept his job despite lying to Congress about gain-of-function research. You know, who isn't caving? Senator Manchin, the Supreme Court, and Republicans across the nation who are fed up with this administration's singular focus on stripping rights and opportunities away from Americans. This administration has more than earned its 33% approval rating, and I hope, for the sake of our country, that the next 3 years are nothing like this one we have endured. Thank you, Madam Speaker, and I yield back.
Well, there you have it. The elusive truth is finally coming out. People are waking up, and they're seeing what's really going on. Thank goodness. 2022 is off to a wild start. Clown World is here to stay, for now. buckle up. It's going to get much crazier. Stay safe, folks. You know what happens when you put Democrats in corners. Just like wild animals, got to watch out for them. With that, thank you for listening. Gary thanks you for listening. We'll talk to him next time. You guys take care. Keep looking for the elusive truth. Be safe. God bless. Thank you. Bye-bye.